The Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks. For some of you, that will ring a bell. But for most sports fans in the Triangle, they're probably wondering why I'm going to devote a few podcast episodes about a defunct World League of American Football franchise that never won a game in their lone season played in 1991. Hey, it's Joe Ovies. And in this season of A Brief History of Triangle Sports, my goal is to highlight how, despite the massive misstep thinking a minor league football team would work at Carter-Finley Stadium, the Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks provide a fascinating jumping-off point to a very important time in our area of North Carolina.
The Triangle has the most unique landscape for sports. 3 major universities along Tobacco Road with rabid fan bases, a Stanley Cup champion, an NFL team right down the road, and heavily invested transplants. Not to mention an interesting mix of sports teams that were. Joe Ovies brings you a brief history of Triangle sports, a candid conversation with those who help shape why sports matters here.
All right, everybody, let's get in the DeLorean. We're going to set the date, November 14th, 1990. After the NFL had spent more than a decade flirting with the idea of taking their brand of quote-unquote football global, they officially announced the creation of the World League of American Football. For those of us of a certain age, we know this league from its final incarnation, NFL Europe, which existed from 1995 until the NFL shut it down in 2007. The inaugural season in 1991 consisted of 10 teams, 3 of them across the Atlantic: Barcelona Dragons, Frankfurt Galaxy, and the London Monarchs. The Montreal Machine, they were the other international squad in Canada, and the remaining teams were based in the United States. You had the New York, New Jersey Knights, Orlando Thunder, Birmingham Fire, San Antonio Riders, Sacramento Surge, and your Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks, owned by former Charlotte business mogul George Shinn.
August 1989. Pro football is a big hit in the Triangle when the Jets and Eagles play this preseason game at a jam-packed Carter-Finley Stadium. And today, football fans seem nearly as excited that the World League will play here in the spring of 1991.
I think it's a great idea. I think it'll help out Raleigh, help out business in Raleigh.
I think there's enough people around here that they could probably do pretty well with a professional team.
I think it's great. I sure do. I love football.
Team owner George Shinn has made it no secret. He wants to play here at NC State's Carter-Finley Stadium, but Shinn has yet to come up with any lease from Wolfpack Athletic Director Todd Turner.
We stepped out on a limb and decided to go ahead and make this announcement. From a negotiating standpoint, that apparently gives them an edge, but we're not going to be hardcore negotiators.
There's a lot to consider, but I think our attitude is one of cooperation, and we'd like to try to be good community participants if it's at all possible.
One Wolfpack official says Shinn may be seeking a lease similar to the one he has with the NBA Hornets in Charlotte. The team pays $1 a year to use the Coliseum, and the city of Charlotte keeps all parking and concession revenue. Before any team kicks off this spring at Carter-Finley, league officials have set a December 10th deadline for Shinn and State to come to terms. So with the clock running down, George Shinn is hoping to score a last-second touchdown with Wolfpack officials. In Raleigh, Jay Jennings, WRAL TV5 News.
The World League of American Football, or as my colleague Jeff Gravely jokingly referred to it, the Wee Laugh, it wasn't supposed to be a minor league for the NFL. Owners truly believed it could be an independent product that would stand alongside the NFL while at the same time bringing potential European talent over to the States. But you can't fool American football fans. One look at the rosters told you that's exactly what it was, a minor league for the NFL. Throw in the general attitudes of sports fans in the Triangle at that time, where the Big Four of North Carolina, NC State, Duke, and Wake Forest were truly covered as professional teams. This was a recipe for disaster. Jay Jennings, longtime WRAL photographer who has shot video for just about every sport that has ever come through the Triangle, really needed to dust off his memory banks when I told him what I was doing.
Since we were the Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks, does that mean the airport is actually the home of the football team?
Man, that's a good question, Shay.
I mean, you throw the hyphen in there, you're just opening up all sorts of...
You really are opening up, and even the colors were trying to tie everything, and they were Christmas. It was red, black,
the worst,
white, and
just
green.
The worst.
But now that it has a particular kind of throwback feel that I do
it's
like.
very kitschy, and
But yeah, I guess when you do name them the Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks, and there's a hyphen in there, you really are going by television rating metric or the airport. Do you find it odd that nobody remembers the Skyhawks?
It is kind of weird.
Yeah.
It is kind of
weird. Like here, there was a professional football team that played at Carter-Finley Stadium in 1991. And when you bring it up, a bunch of people go, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
They don't even remember the World League of American Football. They remember NFL Europe because there were some success stories that came out of NFL Europe. But the We Laugh, as some people would call it, I'm pretty sure that Jim Valvano also did sideline work for this as well.
Bob Holly and I were in Minneapolis at the 92 Final Four, and everybody was flying out on the Tuesday after the Monday night championship game.
Sure.
Coach V was there with us, and he was talking about how he was going to be flying to Europe. I think he was going to Barcelona to do a game. And I just so I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Is there any legacy of the Skyhawks in this area?
I think occasionally that you can buy some of the stuff on eBay, or people are digging some of their stuff out of the attic and some of the old T-shirts and wearing them.
Yeah, look, retro gears. I kind of clown my dad all the time. It's like I see what college kids are wearing now.
Yeah.
And it looks like they've raided your closet.
Exactly. Maybe what we could do is start a campaign to get a historical marker put out on Trinity next to Carter-Finley Stadium that says the Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks played here and never won a game.
Hyphens and airports aside, why Skyhawks? The News and Observer ran a naming contest, and that's the one that stuck. Then the franchise leaned into it. The logo on the helmet featured 3 white jets in triangle formation, nestled in a larger black triangle that was slapped on a bright red helmet, which also featured a green stripe down the center. I'll admit, the contrast pops. And then there was the name of the cheerleading squad, the Kitty Hawks, a cheeky nod to the birthplace of human aviation. Local. That was the sell. The Skyhawks roster was sprinkled with area college players who hadn't latched on in the NFL.
Even in life, you have to, prove yourself over every day.
Former Duke All-American wide receiver Clarkston Hines has 3 days to prove himself to the Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks. Then, Thursday night, the Hawks make a roster cut. It's not much time, and Monday at practice, Hines had only one catchable ball thrown his way while the camera was on him. Nice play, but how does a guy prove himself as a pro in such a short time with so few opportunities to show his stuff? Well, to begin with, he doesn't complain about it.
Every time I'm involved in some kind of action, I just try to do the best I can and show the coaches what I have, despite anything.
Clarkston spent some time in the NFL with Buffalo last year, but couldn't quite break into that Super Bowl caliber lineup. His roommate for Skyhawk camp is former NC State quarterback Shane Montgomery. Now, Shane has a different challenge. He has to try to make this team after never even getting a tryout in the NFL, not having played anywhere last year, and he too has to prove himself in a hurry.
When you get here with new guys, you just have to learn all over again, learn the way they run patterns and their different break points. And, it's been muddy out here, and it kind of makes you feel a little bit slow when you're dropping back to pass, and it kind of throws your rhythm off a little bit. But we're working hard. We only got about 2.5 weeks left before the opener, and I'm just hoping I can make those cuts so I can be on the first, be with the team for the first game.
The Skyhawks will hold a scrimmage at Durham County Stadium on Thursday afternoon. Then by Friday morning, the depth charts will be out, and so will about 20 would-be Skyhawks. These two roomies, Hines and Montgomery, have a lot of folks hoping they'll make the cut. Rick Sullivan, WRAL TV5 Sports.
The head coach, Roman Gabriel, an NC State legend who went on to win the NFL MVP in 1969 and was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame a couple years prior to his return to Raleigh as the man in charge of the Skyhawks.
NC State's best-known quarterback is back in town. Roman Gabriel, 4-time All-Pro with the LA Rams, is now coaching the new Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks. The Skyhawks expect to reach an agreement with NC State to play here at Carter-Finley Stadium. Now, Roman Gabriel never played at Carter-Finley, but the success of the state teams that he quarterbacked helped build this place.
At one time, I had a goal and dreams that I might coach over there at North Carolina State. But if I'm not able to do that, the best next thing is to be right in the same yard and be able to play there.
The Skyhawks practice jerseys have a touch of Wolfpack colors, and no doubt this book of WLAF prospects contains a few familiar names too. Gabriel has put these new assistant coaches straight to work, learning about the 800 players nationwide available in the new league's draft.
And if he's got half the grit that his coach does.
He was in Denver's camp. They can tell us a lot more about it.
Well, we're looking for guys that can come in and play.
I think he's a prospect.
All right.
I'll tell you the kind of team that I see in my dreams, a team that walks off the field winning it all.
There's room on Gabriel's hand for a World League championship ring. Bob Holliday, WRAL TV5 Sports.
There would be no World Bowl, there would be no World League of American Football championship ring for Roman Gabriel. They never won a game. A brief history of Triangle Sports will continue after this break.
This is the desk where Roman Gabriel logged so many hours. Now the season's over.
And I thought about taking a few weeks off, but I don't know. You take a few weeks off, you come back, your chair might be gone. So I might just chain myself to my desk.
Gabriel plans to keep coaching the Skyhawks, and he wants this team to get better during the offseason. Yes, the Skyhawks had adversity. They led the league in injuries. They also led in big mistakes.
You know, even with everything that happened to us, if we don't fumble, if we don't turn the ball over, we win 3 games minimum.
Gabriel expects at least 80% of the Skyhawks players to return. But during the offseason, he expects them to get stronger and quicker.
And we will correct the situation, and we need 1 year to do it.
Player 28, Skyhawks 7.
The Skyhawk players left Carter-Finley Stadium Saturday knowing they finished this year 0-10. But they don't see themselves as 0-10 next year, nor do they think of themselves as 0-10 in life. Bob Holliday, WRAL TV5 Sports.
Despite the optimistic talk of turning it around in their second season, it never happened. It wasn't a sudden decision. Attendance was bad, the Skyhawks lost money, and the Wee Laugh itself was bleeding cash. The area knew it was a wrap weeks before.
Monday night's game seemed to sum up the Skyhawks season, a tiny crowd of just over 4,000, and a sky and a field full of rain, and another performance full of frustration, the 9th loss in a row for the Skyhawks. When the rain stopped, the talk was about more than another loss. It was about the possible end of the team. Owner George Shin told the newspaper as much, leaving team officials scrambling.
I think you could best describe his state of mind right now as frustrated.
Team Vice President Wayne Thompson faced the media today and faced questions about what's gone wrong in Raleigh's first shot at pro football.
You know, if it weren't for bad luck, we'd have no luck at all.
It's not just rain that's made it tough for the Skyhawks to draw fans. The team plays in a stadium that doesn't allow beer to be sold, a fact not lost on potential fans.
So usually when the older crowd like to enjoy a beer or two while I sit down, so I think that has a lot to do with it.
The team's record might have something to do with it too. The Skyhawks have lost all 9 games, and attendance has dwindled with each loss.
I guess maybe they just started off with losing streak, and they kept losing, so everybody just kind of lost interest from the beginning, and it's hard for them to for us to regain interest.
Then there's the wrong season thing. People aren't used to football in May. Come to think of it, people aren't used to pro football at all in Raleigh. Not yet.
Give it a year or two and people will be back and going to the Skyhawk game. Yeah, definitely.
Team officials say the future of the Skyhawks may depend on next Saturday's turnout. That may decide if the game is the Skyhawks' last game of the year or the last game of the team's short life.
Shin shut down the pro football experiment here in Raleigh, but the league trudged on. They replaced the Skyhawks with the Ohio Glory for the 1992 season, which would also be the final season of the World League as we knew it. The NFL went back to the drawing board and rebranded as a European-only league in 1995, and the rest is history. The legacy of the Skyhawks is non-existent, but I don't think that should be the case. They're a perfect subject for a nebulous time in the Triangle. There was a push for an NFL expansion franchise and a grand vision for Triangle Central Park, basically our version of the Meadowlands that would bring professional sports to the area. It also helped set the table for huge changes in college athletics, including an ironic twist over the sale of beer at college stadiums. And then there are personal stories, players and coaches this area loved when they were in college. And here is a team that allowed them one last shot at realizing their dreams.
Tim Peeler's been covering Triangle sports for a very long time. A few stops in the newspaper business, and now I affectionately refer to you, Tim, as NC State's unofficial sports historian. And Tim, I wanted to talk to you because you have a relationship with Roman Gabriel. And Roman Gabriel is an interesting story to me. From here you have this legendary NC State quarterback, an NFL MVP, and an interesting life, but he really wanted to coach. And the Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks gave him that opportunity to coach. I mean, it ended miserably, 0-10, but that opportunity to coach was finally there for him in 1991. But this is something that goes back a few more years than that, right?
Absolutely. People may not remember this, but in 1971, NC State had a little bit of turbulence in its football program. Earl Edwards, the winningest coach in NC State history, abruptly decided to retire at the end of the summer and gave the interim position to his longtime defensive coordinator, Al Michaels. But at that time, Roman Gabriel was coming off of a pretty good season in the NFL. I believe that was his going into what eventually became his NFL player or comeback player of the year award. But he called NC State at that time and said, if you want me to come there and be NC State's coach into the future, I'll retire and come do that right now. Now, you're talking about two massive egos involved with Roman and Willis Casey. That didn't really set up very well that Roman could do that. But Willis Casey decided to go his own path and go out and hire a young coach, up-and-coming guy that we now think of as the elder statesman of football coaches in the country, and that would be Lou Holtz.
Not a bad hire. Not a bad hire.
It was a great hire at the time because he went to 4 consecutive bowl games, something NC State has never done before, and made NC State football relevant in the 1970s when it had its greatest path of athletics, winning football, basketball titles, national titles, baseball, the first 3 baseball championships in the ACC, and 12 straight swimming championships. It was the golden age of NC State athletics.
Were you in Greenville at the time in 1991?
I was in Greenville, South Carolina in 1991 when they made the announcement. Charlotte was still contending for an NFL franchise. There were a couple of different organizations that were looking for it, one led by Jerry Richardson, who was a favored person among the South Carolina contingent, which is the arm that I was from, and Max Mullen had worked at the Greenville News, just as I was doing at the time. And then there was the George Shinn contingent. And he was the owner of the Charlotte Hornets. I'd covered their first 2 years when I was working up in North Carolina, and so they were competing at the time.
And then we had a Raleigh contingent as well that was headed up, or at least by a few people. We know the Too Long Didn't Read version of this. We know the Cliff Notes version of this. Jerry Richardson ends up with the Carolina Panthers, but Shinn has always been interested in professional sports. He had minor league baseball there. There was a push that was denied for a hockey team back in 1997. And here comes the World League of American Football, brings the Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks to play at Carter-Finley Stadium in 1991. Roman Gabriel gets this opportunity. In your conversations with Roman, I mean, does he remember it? Was it a miserable experience going 0-10? What did he tell you?
No, I mean, look, Roman is an interesting and competitive guy. He put everything he had into making that a successful franchise and a successful team. It just didn't have very good community support. It didn't have great administrative support, mainly because you couldn't sell beer at the games. So it was there were some hurdles that had to be overcome. And even though Roman was an ACC leading RBI and home run guy for NC State's baseball team, he was a All-American quarterback as a football player and an NFL guy, and was recruited to play basketball by Everett Case. Even he couldn't jump those hurdles to get things successful. So he tried his best. I think he had a cot over in the field house at Carter-Finley Stadium, and he put everything he had into it, just as he does with everything. He did the same thing with the Charlotte Knights when he was part of the ownership of that group. Everything that he ever did was, around sports. He became one of the most successful fundraisers for charity golf tournaments of anybody who's ever tried to play that game. And that is not an easy game to succeed in because of what you have to do to be successful. But Roman was really good at it.
So the World League of American Football ends up becoming NFL Europa, which then ends up being rebranded as NFL Europe. And there's a lot of success stories within that time frame until it shut down in 2007. We know about Jake Delhomme. We know about Kurt Warner. There's some coaches that have come through. Shout out to Jason Garrett. So it was kind of like an incubator for the NFL, but this didn't work out for Roman Gabriel. Why do you think his coaching dreams never came to fruition?
Well, there were a lot of coaches who weren't successful in going through the World League of American Football process just because the league wasn't successful. You had some winners and losers in there. Raleigh was definitely one of the smaller markets as part of all that. It was not a time, they were branded like some early minor league teams in the area as the Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks. Not Raleigh, not Durham, not the airport. It was the Skyhawks of Raleigh-Durham. It was right at the front edge of that cusp, which I think happened in 1994, that Raleigh was first named the most desirable city to live in the United States. So it's just before that. It's before Raleigh took off, before population exploded. Look, Roman's a friend, but I would never think that he was responsible for why they were 0-10. There were a lot. He was not the sole factor. That's certainly true. He was a great name in the state of North Carolina in the game of football who took his shot at doing something that ultimately didn't succeed.
So there's your too long, didn't read, brief history of the Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks. And now that you know the basics, we're going to pull on a few threads over the next podcast episodes, including the interesting what-if scenario of the Triangle getting an NFL expansion team. Thanks for listening. If you like this episode and you want to wallow a little bit more in the failure, the what could have been in the Triangle, check out our previous episode on the Raleigh Bullfrogs, the ill-fated Global Basketball Association team that played one doomed season, also in 1991. Chris Corciani, NC State legend, he was a Bullfrog, and despite the terrible court conditions and the lack of fans, he loved every minute of it. A Brief History of Triangle Sports is written and reported by me, Joe Ovies. Doug Miller handles our final mix, and big shouts to Jason Jennings for digging up all that wonderful treasure inside the WRAL archives.